welcome back to Dinner and a Game. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are having a conversation, and we're having a conversation about TPKs just being a thing. It's okay. They happen. They're natural. Don't feel bad about it. GMs out there, they didn't listen to you. That's all it is. So anyway, tonight we're having a conversation, and it is going to be about a very touchy subject in the gaming sphere, and that is, hey, Fox Rider, that is a consent in gaming. And I have assembled a panel of people to discuss this, and they are people that I have recently met, and people that I have followed for a while, and people that are active participants in our little community here in Dinner and a Game. So let me go ahead and do a quick introduction of everyone involved. We will start with the newest person that I have met, Lenora. Lenora, you are a creator on Twitch, and you make some incredible and amazing items. Would you like to tell everyone about where they can find you and what you do?
I make Dungeons and Dragons content. It can also be used for other, tabletop games. I make battle maps, magic items, map assets, and I also design, original monsters, creatures, NPCs. I draw other just fantasy and nerdy things that I like, but you can support me on Patreon and get access to all of that.
Which I did.
Yes, you did. I appreciate that. I'm also on the Roll20 Marketplace. And through my Patreon, you can also get Foundry Ready maps as well. But if you just want to keep up with me and just kind of see what I'm talking about, I can be a little mouthy. I have a lot of opinions. Or just want to see what I'm creating, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram are the two biggest ones.
Gotcha. And I'm sorry I asked you about that earlier, but I only put in the Twitter one in the link.
Yep, you're fine.
So we will add that onto here real quick. And there we go. And so Lenora makes amazing stuff, and we are going to talk to her a little bit later about some things that we may want her to do for us if she can and if she has time. I know that a lot of people are very busy nowadays. Everyone's gotten kind of swamped with everything. So if we can get that to happen, we will. If not, it's okay. It's all right. So Ivy, you are someone that I have met through the Lark Network, actually, wasn't it? Where we first came in contact.
Yeah, it was.
And you actually, I was kind of asking questions and in the chat, and I was not really getting any answers. And all of a sudden, Ivy just popped out of nowhere and was like, no, that's not how it works. And she started answering my questions and actually, took the time to actually, during the game, which now I've discovered is kind of just a thing with Ivy. She does 5,000 things at once. So that is definitely something that I'm going to have to get used to and remember. Yep.
I do quite a bit, but yes. I don't mind.
Yes. But Ivy, tell folks what you do. Wait, let me amend that. Give us an abridged version of what you do and where they can find you.
Yeah, so I'm Gamer the Girl over on TikTok, Instagram, Twitch. Okay, I'm on 4 different streams right now. Shut up, sir. I stream sometimes Dungeons, sometimes Dragons with Ben Does D&D. I'm over on Dice Cream Sandwich on Mondays, modding his chat on Wednesdays, and on Lark Network on Wednesdays. Fridays I either am on stream with Ben, or I'm DMing my own game, which is an all-female cast, where it is a completely homebrewed game by me, along with Discord and everything else.
And you were called out in chat, Ivy. It was pointed out that you are on 6 different streams right now.
Okay, look, I could be on 6, but I'm on 4.
And thank you so much for joining us tonight. And lastly, we have our, of course, intrepid and endeavorous Milagros, who is a member of our cast for our Wednesday night game, and also is a content creator, as she says, a baby content creator over on TikTok. Milagros, would you like to tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes. Hi, guys. My name is Milagros. You can find me on a few different platforms as Fountain Pen Femme. I'm gonna be back on my educational TikTok account and my educational Instagram accounts. I've just been trying to finish my junior year of college, and it's a lot. But I'm an author. I want to become an educator on everything related to storytelling, world building, organization, all that stuff. I think that a lot of people have stories that they want to tell and don't know where to start in terms of actually, getting things written down and getting them out there. And I want to help people with that. I also am starting to get really interested in gaming stuff and might end up turning one of the worlds I've built into a game because there's so much that's already there. But yes, I'm super happy to be here. I love participating in the Kingdoms of Mist campaign, and it's just been so fun to be introduced to this community. So I'm very happy to be here.
And we're very happy to have you, and honored to have you on Dinner in a Game, by the way. So, to open up the conversation, we have to go basically kind of give a little history and a little knowledge about what consent in gaming actually is about and what it means. In 2019, Monte Cook Games produced a little PDF document that talked about the aspects of how do you make sure that your gamers at your table are comfortable, are aware of what is going to be happening in your games, and are able to have input on that and be able to tell you what is okay and what doesn't make them comfortable, what makes them uncomfortable, what they're okay with, what they'd rather avoid. And this document was pretty concise and pretty direct, and it basically talked about consent in gaming. And that concept is that everyone at the table, stretch. Tyrannozoid has told us to stretch. Hang on a second. I'm also going to self-hydrate because, I talk too much.
I already did my stretch. Woo.
All right, there you go. So, basically, the big thing about consent is when you're a game master or a player and you're at the table, you're there to have fun and enjoy yourself. I do understand that RPGs are also a source of, enacting the dramatis persona, becoming another character, feeling out that character, and embodying that character for some people. Not everyone likes that, but it's a lot for a lot of people. Now that equals out to possibly getting into uncomfortable situations in roleplay. Consent in gaming is a way to, before you start gaming, have a discussion as a group of what is absolutely beyond your comfort zone in the roleplay aspects of the scenario, or even in combat, because there are some issues in combat that might take it too far. And this document it went over the details very well, laid out everything, and included a consent in gaming checklist form that you could just hand out. It was digital. You didn't have to hand it out. It was literally a digital form fillable PDF. So you could just email it to your gamers, they could fill it out, send it back to you, and you would have a clear idea of what was okay, what was not okay, what was depending on the situations. So it was very laid out and very well done. The shitstorm that this started has not ended, and it's almost 3 years later. The reason it did is there were a ton of people who felt like they were being told how to run a game. And at the same time, there was a whole bunch of people who were like, the GM is not an overlord and should be considering this for his players. And that's kind of that is in a very broad spectrum, the argument that's been happening for 3 years. So, first off, I want to give you all a chance. If any of you have... wait. It's behind my thing. I can't see it. Someone just followed us, but I cannot see their name because I put it behind the stupid thing. But anyway, so thank you very much for the follow.
It was at Library of Lost Tales.
Oh, Library of Lost Tales? I thought they followed me earlier. But maybe they... Thank you for following Library of Lost Tales. But anyway, the biggest thing about this whole conversation is that there is a lot of instances. I've seen a lot of instances of it, and everyone has experienced being uncomfortable at a game table in one way or another at some point or another. And if you look at this and see how it hurts your players when this happens, it shouldn't be an issue. But yet we still constantly have people feeling resentful of these implications of this, and often this comes out in arguments online, arguments in the game store. So what I wanted to ask is, first off, has everyone here experienced that in any way, shape, or form? Like the uncomfortable silence at the table when something happens that's really odd, weird, disturbing?
Who's gonna start?
Who wants to go first?
Anyone can
start.
Go ahead.
I mean, I've definitely had like real life situations outside of like D&D games. I might be a little bit of kind of a one-off in the sense of I was brought into D&D with an amazing group that I trusted, that respected me, and we all had different backgrounds, but like we were all on the same page. So I have not had those experiences in D&D, and I'm so thankful. But I know, like, you know, you and I, like, we connected on Twitter because of a post that I made. And the stories that were shared on that post, the stories that were privately messaged to me because people just wanted to be heard and validated, just broke my heart. And so I know that I'm so lucky, and that kind of that juxtapose, there we go, between my wonderful experience and these terrible experiences, it's just night and day. And so I think I have other reasons that I'm passionate about this too, but like just knowing what people have gone through when they could have had a good experience just makes me so angry.
Yeah. And just before we came up on the show, I was talking about an experience that I had at my table with one of my players, and I do session zeros, and I do not consent forms where we discuss what is okay and what is not okay, and we really should use a consent form because it's really detailed. But yeah, we were talking about it, and there was a scene that played out that triggered one of the players, and they had not listed that they had a problem with the style and scene that was going on, and it triggered something because it wasn't exactly anything that they had listed, but it was close enough that it triggered them, and then they didn't tell me about it during the process. So afterwards there was a very uncomfortable few moments, and then we discussed it and came out and we understood what happened, and we actually had a good learning experience from it because we knew we had to be more expressive about what was bothering us. So that was, but it was still, because she was a really good friend of mine, and it was really difficult to know that I had made her uncomfortable with the roleplay situation. And so I completely get it from the GM's point of view of, you know, it has to be well discussed and understood. So, did anyone else have anything they wanted to talk about? You don't have to.
I mean, I don't have horror stories of my own, which I'm very grateful for because I've only ever been in a couple of games, and Kingdoms of Mist has been the one that's met the most frequently, that I've had the most sessions with, and it's wonderful. And so I'm glad that my introduction has been really positive, but I have heard a lot of horror stories from friends of mine who have been in the gaming scene I have one friend who's been playing D&D for 10 years already, and we're the same age. I'm 21. And you know, when I told her that I was like really like wanting to get into this stuff and like, you know, branch out into like the online community because, you know, quarantine, she was like, be careful, here's some red flags to look out for, if anything happens you tell me, I'll kill him. I'm just like, okay, thank you.
Calm down, no death necessary.
Yeah, I'm like, no, this like first of all, the block button is right there. But she has already been playing since she was like a young tween, and she's like, the stuff that I've been put through, and I'm like, oh my god, like that shouldn't be the case, especially with a kid. My little sister has been playing tabletop RPGs for longer than I have. She's younger than me, and she has also, and it's sad, but like she's gotten lucky that the adults participating in the games that she's in have been very protective of her, because know they know that she's a minor. They know that like she started when she was about 14, and they took the responsibility that they should have as adults in the space and protected her. But I don't even want to think about what has happened to other people, especially young women who have gotten into the scene young and didn't know that they had to be so careful, because every community has its problems and unfortunately its predators. And that's especially with something as personal as role playing and embodying characters in extreme situations, because that's what fiction and adventure is, that can be really harmful.
Absolutely. That is kind of why I think that this came, well, I don't want to say that's why it came about, but I think a lot of what comes about out of it is that a lot of us know people who have had bad experiences like this, and then it comes around that we're trying to coax other people into playing, and trying to bring comes around that we're trying to. Sorry about that. We're trying to coax other people playing, bring other people into the game sphere, and it ends up just being a sore point that is like, how can we make this seem safe when we've seen these things happen? And we've seen these things happen to good people who didn't deserve it. And it's one of those things where I'm like, gaming is my safe spot. Safe space always has been, but to think that there are other people who can feel threatened in that space, it makes me feel very insecure about the blessed sanctity that I feel about gaming. It's not that place. There are people who are predatory in gaming, and it's really difficult to think about. Sorry. But yeah, so the whole point with the what Monte Cook did with that document was he laid out that there is a lot of groundwork to be covered when trying to bring consent into gaming, and that there's a lot of foundational permissions that need to be addressed, both as the GM running the scenes and as the players who are the ones being subject to what the GM is doing. And although player agency should always be a massive thing for GMs, in the end the GM is the arbiter of what happens in the scenes, regardless of rules, setups, regardless of what you're playing. The GM is the arbiter. Hang on 1 second.
There's actually,
Go ahead.
as well with that, not only is it important for the players to feel safe when a DM or GM is running a game, it also is on the players if they are making everyone else, including the DM or GM, uncomfortable. Consent is a round table, it's not just players.
Yeah, absolutely.
I, as a young woman running D&D, as a forever DM until last year, experienced a player who showed up at my table, and immediately was like, oh, without asking, I'm going to roll to see which of your NPCs I've already slept with. This is an older gentleman who has come into my space in my game, who was 2 hours late to session already as is, and decided that this is how he was going to proceed without consent. There was no prior notice or consent up until that point. So consent is not only a player, but it's on the entirety of the table, including the DM, to make sure what you are communicating.
I didn't even think about that.
Oh my god.
I didn't know about that. I am very sorry that happened to you, Ivy.
But that's the thing. It's a learning experience, and as a player, now we know, okay, this is something that you're going to do. You're not allowed at my table. Cool. But it was also partly because we had not set a boundary beforehand or talked about what the consent at my table is, which is why those session zeros are so important, or those checklists or those forms.
Yes.
The communication is so important. Otherwise, you end up in situations similar, or a DM or GM runs a scene that the player is extremely uncomfortable with, which is why this is so important to talk about.
Yeah. Like, as an example, on the check sheet that Money Cook Gaming's published, there is different aspects listed, like horror, relationships, social and cultural issues, mental and physical health, and then any additional topics that don't fit in any of those. And he has a bunch of things already created as a checklist. Like for horror, something as simple as bugs, blood, demons, eyeballs, gore, harmed animals, harm to children, rats, spiders. Those are just like, you can just go right down the checklist and go with it. But then there's, you can actually add in more if there's things that you think fit under there. In relationships, this is one of the ones I think is really cool, because in relationships, he has romance and sex as their own categories. So you can literally just check off no romance at all. You know what I mean? Or he has different levels in each one of the categories. Romance is, you may role play like you're getting into a romantic situation, but then it fades to black. There's nothing else. There's obvious sparks, but then it just goes away because the characters are not comfortable with it. Then there's explicit, only between NPCs and PCs, or between PCs as well. So it breaks it out. And then sex is the same thing. It has the same exact rules to it, because there is a lot of aspects of role-playing games that will lead to interpersonal relationships between player characters, and they don't have anything to do with the players. So there's some people who are comfortable role-playing romance in an RPG, and there's some people who feel it's crossing some line in their personal life, and they don't. So that's a huge thing right there. And then, of course, cultural issues are one of the biggest, one of the other big reasons that this came about, because there are, I'm really loath to say this, but there are literal role-playing games based around groups that, well, just to say it, just to give it as a direct example, there is a role-playing game designed and built for Nazis, white supremacists, and it's sold. It's you can find it on the internet in 10 seconds.
I'm gonna have to note that one. Sorry.
Yeah. But that's what I'm trying to say. That the RPGs. I don't want to. RPGs are like sexuality. Every shade of the spectrum exists.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
That's the whole thing. That's the best way I can, make it culturally relevant, I guess, is that, RPGs have this broad spectrum of categories. It goes from as simple as, do you like fantasy or sci-fi, down to, do you want to be, to roleplay cultural Darwinism, or do you want to be, go and play My Little Ponies?
As long as it's not Nazis.
I swear, I did not know this existed until 2 years ago. And then it came up on some Facebook group I was in. And someone just posted up, was like, did you guys know this existed? And yeah, it's out there and it's real. And it is as horrible as you think it would be. And
I have to say no for that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You want to find it and convert it into stuff? Okay, Foxwriter, I read most of it. I found a free copy online, and it is not something you'd even want to bother to read. Once I got into the portions where it was talking about how you get rewarded and how you gain things, it was terrifying and horrible. So it is literally what it sounds like, and it is horrible. I'm not even going to mention the name of it. It's terrible. But All that being said, what are your guys' opinions on the aspects of bringing? What do you think is the best way to bring up this concept with a new table, not just with a table of people that you know? Let's put it in this context. Is everyone here familiar with Adventures League?
Yes.
No. Okay, so Adventures League is something that Wizards of the Coast created in 2014. It is based a lot off of Pathfinder groups. And it is organized play for Dungeons and Dragons. Now, because of that, you basically go to a game store, you say you're going to run Adventures League, you sit down at a table, and strangers come up and sit down. And they are expecting to play Dungeons and Dragons. So what do you guys think the best way to bring up this concept in that type of format would be? Because I will tell you this, from 2014 to 2019, I ran Adventures League every single week and multiple times a week. And this was something that was one of the biggest obstacles, was getting new players to understand that even though this is a game, and yeah, none of this matters, and blah, 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 you can't just come to a table and, like, attack your fellow players. Or we had one guy who showed up, and there was a trap that would that closed on could lock all the players in a room, but they discovered it. So they disabled it so they could go into the room and get the loot. Well, don't know why. This guy had been a problem all evening, but this guy waited for everyone to go in the room, and then he set off the trap and trapped them inside there. And then he ran off and left.
What a dick.
He didn't even get any loot. The loot was in the room with them. He was just doing it to be a dick. I have no idea. He sat there for 2.5 hours playing with us just to be able to do something like that. And then he was laughing, and he was blah blah, and everyone was like, well, why would you even do that? And he's like, because I thought it was funny. And I was like, and the table was taking care of it. I didn't even have to handle it. They're just like, oh no, we need to discuss this. But yeah, it was that type of thing is like, that's why that's kind of why the whole aspects of consent in gaming are so important. Because had we talked about this beforehand, he would have had more of an understanding of what styles of gameplay are appropriate at that table. And he would have known that, like, intentionally sabotaging your players just because it makes you laugh is not going to be something that endears you to the rest of the group.
No.
But I know
it's what my character would do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That has been a nightmare for decades.
I love the instant.
Yeah.
In that situation, because I actually, with my all girls game, none of my players, and we did not know each other prior up until a couple of weeks before, where I ran a one shot first. But we all sat down, and individually I went over not only the form, but also had them tell me, is there anything else? Okay, great. Then we do weekly check-ins if I need to, or every other, or I send out a Google Doc that says, hey, give me feedback. Is there anything here that's triggering to you, etc. I saw two of my girls in the chat who were like, yes, I remember filling these out because I made them. But it's having that checklist and having those conversations is very helpful, because in a one shot, it was horror based. I ran this past week. I was like, I need you to fill out these consent forms, otherwise you cannot play. Mm-hmm. Because I need to know where your hard limits are, because they were facing a beholder. The beholder turned into a death tyrant. I had a 2-phase. If you don't know what a death tyrant is,
watched that game.
It was so much fun. It is a beholder that views themselves, like, dreams about being something after death. They turn into a skull. Same thing, but it sheds, basically. It turns into. So
it's
I was like, I need your hard limits. It's an undead beholder, basically. I was like, I need your hard limits. But my girls are great, because I will say, I need you to check in on us. Like, I need you to check in. Is everybody okay? And having the decompression afterwards of sitting with your players at a table after session and saying, okay, is everybody good? What did you like? What did you not? The communication needs to be there. And it can be so stressful to bring it up with a new group of players who maybe you don't know very well. But the communication and the hard boundary needs to be set of that you're going to have that communication. Because if you set that precedent, it's a little easier for them to know, okay, cool, we have to have that conversation now. And if it's like that, where it's at a game table, maybe having them just write down real quick of, these are my hard limits. These are my boundaries. And having a system in place where it's like, okay, throw up an X, like with your hands if something is upsetting you, anything, tell me to stop. Those hard limits need to be set pre-game. I am in the game where we did not do a session 0 or a session like beforehand. One of my players, well, I was not the DM, but one of the fellow players had a serious issue with something that came up that was not previously discussed. We have since filled out those consent forms. This is why it's so important, is because we had to immediately halt game and go to a break. Because it was triggering for them and they didn't expect it to be that bad.
Yep. No, I get it. I completely get that. Like I said, that one scene that I ran with that friend, I did not play up the scene because it got to the point where, looking over at her, you could see the reaction going across her face. So I knew instantly when we started the scene that, I wasn't going to really play up any aspects of it. I just wanted to get the scene in place because it was their two characters, how they met. So I wanted to just put the scene in place and then get through it and get done with it and move on. And it was, the scene ran very well, very perfectly. It was a great scene. But afterwards we took a break almost immediately. Because, it was obviously, you could just see from her face that it was obviously stressing her out. And that is that type of, I did not like that feeling. You know what I mean? And so that was like hard.
God, it's so hard to see not only a player, if you're a fellow player watching a fellow player go through that, and then everybody feels awkward or uncomfortable, but also being the DM who just played that out and knowing you are partially responsible for that, whether you meant to or not. Which is why the consent and those communications are so important. Otherwise, you are both left with this really awkward, bad, stressful feeling of how this game just went.
Yep. And I am very much a DM who wants to try and extract emotional reactions from my players. I want to tap into those raw moments and have them experience those in character. But I don't want to make it be, well, that's a stupid thing to say because it automatically is trauma. But
okay, but there's a difference between on stream, like on in-game trauma, a character's experienced something really emotional, rough, and then having a real-life reaction to a trigger of something bad happening.
Yeah.
There's a difference between like the fun emotional trauma of your character where you're like, wow, that was really traumatic for them and their backstory, that was really emotional, but wow, that was a really good game. Mm-hmm. Other than coming back and taking away of, wow, this thing happened, I feel horrible about how this game went, but that was really emotional for me. There's a difference between the separation of you yourself and your character's trauma.
Yeah, there's
as much as we joke as it being therapy and the self-projection.
Oh yeah, that's something I actually never joke about. I have always maintained that if you do not play a role-playing game for therapy unless you're playing it with your therapist. We are not therapists. We need to be paid for that. I've been a professional DM for the past 5 years. By that I mean I run D&D for corporate events. I go to events and they give me scenarios that they want portrayed, and I create adventures based around those scenarios for team building exercises. And then I go run D&D for a weekend at some event, and that's basically what I do. And it's I say professional just because I actually get paid, but I only do it like on the weekends every once in a while. But, that's the whole aspect of that for me is the fact that, that's a different aspect of when you're getting paid. Because when I'm getting paid, I have expectations that are been set either by the players who are paying me for personal games or by the company that's paying me to come run events. So I kind of disassociate the paid GM from the personal GM. The personal GM, I am much more willing to take on topics that are deeper and much more meaningful to my players, because usually I know them, or I get to know them during the game, and I can find the triggers that I need to extract, or to not extract, to get them to have that level of buy-in with their character, to identify some portion of themselves with their character, and to make themselves want to care about the character. That's the biggest aspect for me. I don't like with Milagros. I don't have to do that at all. Milagros loves her character so much, she's already fucking there. But with a lot of players, a lot of players build characters and they have a great idea and they have a plan, but they don't. They think they have their personality for their character. They think they have everything planned, but then they start playing it and it changes completely through the gameplay. So it's you want to have story that's compelling and story that makes you want to embody the character for the portion of that story, but you also want to make sure that you're not going over that line. And that's the hardest thing for me as a GM to do, because once I feel that emotional response and I feel that buy-in from a player, I know that this can become an incredible experience for them. And I know that I can feed into that and I can make it better. But it's this is why I can come back to this. It's very dangerous because you're playing with emotions at that point. And that's why I say don't go to D&D for therapy. Because in the end, as a group, we're looking for story. And story isn't always healthy.
Oh my god. I have so many opinions about that. Oh my god. No, seriously.
Fire away.
As someone who's working on books that I want to publish and has been I grew up in fandom space, specifically on Tumblr. I was an OG 2012 Tumblr user. You think you've seen hell sites? I was there. All these legendarily bad internet moments people talk about, like they're legends. I was there for that. Oh my gosh, I was there for like the commodification of oppression and how all of that was turned into like social points, and it's a whole thing. I was there for the development of like this purity culture that insists if you have certain things in your fiction, whether it be in a game or a fan fiction or a story, that means you directly condone and agree with that thing, and it drives me up the wall. The purpose of fiction, one of the purposes of fiction, is to be able to experience like tons of impossible and crazy and amazing and terrible things with some distance, with a distance that makes it safe. If you're reading about something that's really intense, like, yes, that can be triggering, but it is not happening to you. And role-playing blurs this a little bit more than like just reading something. But you're not physically actually present in that moment. You are not experiencing whatever is happening in the fiction completely. And it's fine to want to like include things that you dislike in your fiction for tons of reasons, for catharsis, for curiosity, to get an emotional reaction, or maybe bad things are being done by villains. Guys, villains are supposed to do bad things. I can't.
For a reason.
The way that people have forgotten that villains are villains.
Wait, you don't mean they have to be redeemed every time?
No.
What?
There are people who are just bad.
bad.
Not only there are people who are just bad, but me coming up with a bad person whose purpose in my story is to be bad does not mean I condone their bad actions and would do them if I could. Like, no, there's a reason they're my villain. Like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't think that's right. That's why they're the villain and they're gonna get murdered at the end. And so I get so frustrated with that when people try to push responsibility at where it doesn't belong. Like, the DM is not actually stabbing you when your character is stabbed. That's not how this works. And I think that, especially if you don't know each other very well, there can be this kind of like, taking things extra personally, like thinking like, oh, the DM's out to get me. Like, no, your dice is out to get you. It's not them. This person isn't attacking you. They are a facilitator in a form of social entertainment, and that is not the same as like being a perpetrator of the actions they are describing. And I think that that's an important distinction to make, that consent is essential, but also players need to understand the roles that everyone else is playing, that it is play. This is recess, guys. We're pretending we're the warrior cats. Like, this isn't actually happening. And yeah.
So Lenora, you were mentioning that you've how many different groups have you played in?
So it's really just our main group. My husband DMs for a group as well, but it's also like close family and like friends too. So I mean, we've definitely created like our own personal safe space. You know what I mean? We really only play with people that we know. So I have played with the same people, and I've also DM'd them. So
Yep. So one of the things I was going to mention about that is that was one of when this first came out in 2019. That was one of the biggest points of pushback that so many people tried to say about this, was that they had been playing for X amount of years and they had never seen this happen. And then when people started talking to them about it, it turned out that they were in similar situations to yours. They had been playing for 10 years with the same group at the same house, with the same people, with rarely anyone moving or leaving or coming back into the group. And so that is a microcosm.
Right.
And that was, and I think you mentioned it already when you went on Twitter and you were talking about this. You had so much input from people that it was probably pretty shocking, I'd guess, because you had this great experience all this time, and then you found out that there is the dark side.
Right. I mean, here's the thing. You would like to say that it was shocking. I mean, I've had experiences out in the real world as a woman, and it doesn't just happen to women. I think it's amazing that so many of the stories that were shared on that post were also from men, which I think squashes a lot of stereotypes and a lot of long-held beliefs about sexual assault and sexual harassment and stuff. But also, I wear a lot of hats, and my day job, I'm actually like a mental health social worker. And so, just the brokenness I see when it comes to domestic violence, sexual assault, all of those different topics that are very triggering and that have a lot of trauma. I know what happens in real life, and I know that carries over in other aspects or in other areas, even the areas that should be safe. You know what I mean? So, I wish I was surprised, but I wasn't, and at the end of the day too, I mean, I think I told you in that first kind of message, that is another reason why I'm so passionate about this. I am trauma informed. And I know a lot of people don't always know exactly what that term means. And so I not dumb it down, obviously, that kind of has a negative connotation, but I simplify it by just simply, go into every situation with every person by putting yourself in their shoes. That's being trauma informed,
Yep.
You go into that situation thinking, from their point of view.
Yeah. It's like they were saying, like the article that I was reading about the Monty Cook publication. The default setting for any question about are you comfortable is no.
Right.
It is,
Absolutely.
you start out with no, and you work your way into, well, what makes you comfortable?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because, and this is one of the darker aspects of what came out is a lot of the guys like my age and stuff like that were upset that this thing even really existed, because they were like, we've done this for so long, and even the ones who had like more varied experiences, we've done this at conventions and we've done this forever, and we've always done it this way, and we never needed that. You guys are so sheltered and blah blah blah. And I was just like, and I looked at that and I was like, you also couldn't get people to come to your conventions because
Right.
you treated strangers so poorly.
Mm-hmm.
You gave people so many bad experiences. As a social peer group, the gaming industry for the first 30 years of its existence was very restrictive in who they allowed in,
Yeah.
just by social peer pressure. I mean, when I was in high school, and dinosaurs walked the earth, there was, I had some, well, okay, be honest. There was a girl I liked who lived across the street from me. And I was a complete and utter dork. And we had some friends over and we were playing D&D. And she and her sister were walking by, and we had known each other for years by this point. So she came walking up in the garage to see what we were doing, and we told her what we were doing, and she sat down to play. And man, there was one kid in our group, and he just was livid. I mean, we were like 14, 15, but he was just livid that girls were going to play D&D and everything like that. And now that I'm an adult, I look back on it and I was like, okay, so he was just traumatized because he was going to have to socially interact with girls, and he was nervous and scared about it, and that's the way he lashed out. But now I would go to, like, I look back at some of my convention experiences, and I see girls sit down at a gaming table and guys freak out and treat them like an alien species, and I'm like, you're 40! Stop it!
You're
I
40.
think it's so
You have a
funny
mortgage.
because I've been to going to cons since I was 16,
Uh-huh.
and luckily, like, my experiences have been very good. But it's so funny to me because I am one female in a predominantly male environment most of the time. Having grown up online with a lot of my online friends being guys, just being one of the few female DMs that I knew for a while up until like this point. I started out DMing a group of 12 guys.
12?
That's
I
a
don't
big
know what
group.
I would have done had any of them been like, oh, a girl can't DM. I'd be like, well, you guys are out of luck. Like, I have no female players at that point. Like, my home game has no female players up until very recently. I have one. It is the spouse of one of my players, who's wanted to play. I can imagine how they would have treated her if it was an older group of just like, you're a woman, you can't play, or oh, you're a woman, you can't DM. Like, that to me is ridiculous because some of the best players and some of the best DMs I know are female. Like, I don't, like, there are some incredible male DMs. They're across the board. There are incredible DMs and so many amazing creators that DM these games. But I can't imagine being like, oh, you're female, you can't do that, sorry.
And
It's
you
ridiculous to me.
It is completely ridiculous, but you would be horrified to see how many of these guys out there think that is a literal valid argument.
I know, and I've seen it because I run a very big Discord that has male and female people in it. And some of the women that have come into that space, it's like, it floored me because I know it exists. I've been very lucky to experience very minimal of that for the most part. Somebody came into the Discord and the first thing they said in the general was, you guys aren't going to kick me out because I'm a woman, right? And I was like, no, we're not.
my god.
Nope, that is not a thing. Sorry.
That doesn't happen here.
I feel it's just absolutely ridiculous. I
Yeah.
don't.
and you know, there is, and one of the things that has this kind of situation has brought up, and we're kind of lapsing into gatekeeping at this point, but this is kind of built on consent as well, is there are, I have seen so many all-female tables, and I've seen so many men attack the fact that they're not letting men in. You know, that they feel more comfortable playing with other ladies.
I have an all-female game that I run. All of my wonderful players are women. One of them plays a male character, but all of us on stream on a consistent basis are women, where I have like guests occasionally. Like I had a first guest and he was male, but for the predominant most part, it is all of us females. And I had somebody jump in one of our very first games in the chat that was male and immediately say to one of my players, "What does that mouth do?" And I was like, okay, cool. And that's insane to me. Where nothing sexual was happening on stream, nothing in general. It was just instantly rudeness because it is an all-female cast. That's insane.
I mean, it's just so hard to hear that and go, why are they doing this to
Why
us?
do we have
Not to
That is-
be a sociology student on Maine, but this is just a reminder of how like nothing, yes, Foxrider, nothing ever exists in a vacuum ever. It's not possible. It's not possible to remove people and what they say and what they do and what they think and how they act from the greater context, because of course, you know, men in a patriarchal society who are the dominant group are going to go, well, yeah, you can't sit with us, you don't even go here, and then we'll go, oh my gosh. And this is every dominant group will point to the subordinate group and go, if you don't like it, go make your own. And then we go make our own, and they're like, what's all this? This is
Who told you to do
reverse
this?
This is reverse sexism. That's not a thing. It's
You also
not
have
a
the
thing.
issue too, when we start having these conversations of is this just a joke or well, I mean, sorry, it's just a joke is what I meant to say.
It's
You know.
just a joke.
It's just a joke. I'm just joking.
I think it's funny when someone says, like, oh, it's just a joke, and you ask why. It's funny to watch them explain why it's funny when it's not.
Yeah, can you why that's funny? Yeah, I always like to do that
Give
too.
me
But
their words.
yeah, they want to throw it off as a joke, and then you've got this whole group of people who say, oh, the other side's just overly sensitive.
Yeah.
We don't need to talk about consent. You're just being overly sensitive. It's just a joke.
If I was to make any of them uncomfortable at the table, though, that would be an issue.
Oh no, that's illegal.
It's not okay.
Yeah.
That's illegal. But that's why it's so important to have those conversations in that session zero, or have that conversation one-on-one, whatever else, for that consent, so you know the issues. Because if something like that comes up where maybe you did not realize that this person has a precedence against another gender, or somebody identifying as somebody else, or anything else, then you can sit down and have that conversation and either remove them from the table or deal with that issue beforehand. Which is why communication and the consent that comes with it is so important to have before your games.
Yeah.
Or having the fortitude, like mental fortitude, to stop a game, even if it's been only 10 minutes, to talk about that consent and get that before you go any farther with it.
Oh yeah, and in the biggest one of the other struggles is that this is a conversation that can be difficult to have, because you're looking at a group of people trying to get together to perform a social interaction that is going to be very intimate. And that veiled intimacy, or that implied intimacy, can cause people to act out in ways that they might not otherwise do so, because they have that feeling of, we're all doing this together. We're all doing this as then. So whatever I'm feeling, you're feeling. Whatever I'm understanding, you're understanding. And that comes into a very hard reality of it's not always about you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's another aboutism that came about through this that is been one of the biggest and hardest ones to make some aspects of our community understand, is that this isn't about one person or one individual. This is about the health of the table and the health of the community in general. And that is probably, in the end, I think that's one of the hardest things to deal with, because in the end, people who take that line of logic are not going to be willing to think outside of that logical fallacy. They're going to latch onto that as an anchor to try and hold on to what they feel is their, not right, but their will, I guess you'd say, or their agency in being able to control that aspect of the game. They're going to try and cling on to that and use it as this battering ram against any points you try and bring up that could be completely based on fact and logic. Yeah. They're just going to hold on to this, and it makes it so hard to have that conversation when you get in a person like that. And 90% of the time, I'll be completely honest, I give them like 2 or 3 tries and then they're gone. But when you're doing things outside of your private games and your private tables, when you're running at conventions, or when you're running for Adventures League, or running at the game store as a favor to the owner to try and bring people into the store to play, that type of thing, you're faced with that difficult situation. And I think that makes it even more necessary to have these consent tools available, and to have all these articles out there that you can refer back to and that you can utilize in order to have these conversations in ways that, at the very least, will bring this entire topic into a factual representation, rather than, oh, I just think that this is a better way to do it because it makes everyone more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that, I think, is a very, very important point, because you do have the people we've been discussing all night exist because we've been discussing them all night. And there is nothing that can be done for them except go, well, these are the rules. Because in the end, they're trying to exert their authority over you by trying to put what they want in it. So if you are just as authoritarian with them, I hate that term, but it's the best one to use. But if you're just as authoritarian with them and you say, you can have your opinion, you can think what you like, but these are the rules at this table. If you wish to sit down... Sorry, Lenora, what?
Oh, I was just agreeing with you. Yeah.
So if you wish to sit down, then you're going to fill this form out.
And if you don't like it, go make your own, buddy.
Go make your own.
Go ahead.
I have this Nazi game that you might be interested in.
Go be
God.
somewhere else.
God.
Literally,
it's become a staple in my Discord, where my DMs decided as a community, as a group, that all of their players have to fill out that form now.
Mm-hmm.
All of them have access to it. It's pinned in so many channels because so many people need to have that because they don't know. Or I don't ever want somebody to come to me and tell me they're uncomfortable because their DM was like not having those conversations. I don't want a DM to tell me, well, I didn't know I'd have to. Or I just didn't think about it. This is an important conversation to have regardless of if you thought about it or not. Somebody needs to bring it up.
Yeah.
Player or DM.
And I do think that everyone needs to remember one thing. Since we all do this, as I said, since it is an intimate thing, and we usually do this with people who are our friends, people we already know, this conversation is usually going to consist of, hey, can you fill this out? I want to make sure that everything goes smooth and that you're comfortable and I'm comfortable and that we're all cool with everything that happens tonight. So just read this little pamphlet, fill this out, and hand it back to me and we'll be good. And they're like, okay, cool. And that's it.
Yeah, I have not ever had anybody push back or tell me no. So I hope I don't ever have to have that hard conversation with somebody being like, I don't want to fill this out. Well, if I do...
I have, but only in those situations that I described.
Right.
you know, outside of
lucky.
private tables.
I'm lucky where the communities I'm involved in, I've never had that pushback. No. But if I did, then we would have to have that conversation of, well, I need to know, the table needs to know, even if I don't, because there's something, it is a private thing between you and me. I will compile a generalized main form for me of what everyone's comfortable with and not. I don't need to know or tell anybody else who put what. It's okay. I think making it a priority of, okay, well, look, I just need you to fill this out and nobody else is going to see it. Because somebody might not want to put or have anybody else saying that they have a red on self-harm. They may not want to have that conversation or somebody
that is
asking
very
questions,
true.
which is why it is so important to have those conversations, whether in private or immediately at the table.
That is very, very true. And like I said, I think in the beginning when I was talking about have any of you ever had any experiences that would be relatable about this, you know, that was one of the things that was like, you know, that's why I kind of said you don't have to be specific. You don't have to tell us exactly what happened, because that is, you know, that is opening yourselves up, being vulnerable. And, you know, like I said, I've only talked to Ivy in text. Milagros I've talked to a lot, and Lenora I just met last week. So, you know, it's a lot to ask of anyone to share those type of things with so little time to have gotten to know or trust one another. But it is also a huge deal for people who are sitting down, even with people that they know very well, to look at these issues, which can be, like we've said a million times, can be very triggering or can be very personal and very intimate, and have those issues then be, you know, them worry about those issues being opened up to everyone at the table just by implication. Because you checked self-harm. Does that mean you've hurt yourself? Does that, you know, is there something you want to talk about? It's like, no, fucker, I checked it on a checklist.
That'd be like me being like, hey, Lenora, I'm going to have you in this one shot. I need you to fill this out. Okay, great, you filled it out. I noticed you put a lot of reds on certain romance things. Like, are you okay? I'm not going to do that. I was like, oh, there's reds? Cool. I will make that a mental note in my mind, or even on a post-it note off to one side. Cool, these are everyone's triggers.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't
Well-
have to be a full interview of just like, okay, so you don't like this. Why is that? Like, no, it's not the point.
No, it's not an interview of, yeah, I noticed that you have like all of these check marks. Can you tell me why you have a problem with eyeballs? I'm really
They freak me out, okay?
okay, cool.
Like, I feel like
God, that makes it more uncomfortable having that conversation of, okay, I noticed you have a lot of reds here. Like, nobody wants to have a DM that's questioning why you have all these reds or yellows.
Not
That's
fun.
so awkward.
honestly, it's and it's, I feel like this is something that should be, I know the word has been used to absolute death, but like, I don't know, normalize and bring back like language like squicks and stuff that, you know, let people know like, hi, I just hate this thing. It's not part of my tragic backstory. I just absolutely hate it, and if it is present, I will leave. So don't. Like, I have the website Does the Dog Die like bookmarked on my computer. It started out as a website to help people avoid movies where animals die, and has since branched out into like, is there a queer character that dies? Which, absolutely, if you're gonna bury your gays, I'm not watching it. I have no interest in that. And it's branched out to all different kinds of horror as well, where they're like, oh, there's like, you know, like you mentioned before, there's like this kind of violence, or there's like possession or stuff like that. I have issues with dolls moving and mirror stuff. I hate it, absolutely hate it, and I will not tolerate it. And so there are movies that I'll be interested in, and I'll go to the website and be like, let me just check really quick. Oh, there's a doll moving on screen? Nope, I'll never know what happens there.
Because I'm not gonna be like, hey, tell me about why you marked dolls as a red.
Yeah, like,
I'm really confused. I'm not gonna interview you for that.
yeah, like, breaking news. Why do you hate dolls? Please answer in front of everyone. Like,
please, for the class.
please
the
speak
class.
up.
I don't like the dolls because of the eyeballs. Oh my
I
god.
we talked about this. Yeah, I think that it's like sometimes you just hate stuff. Like that's another thing that like I I mean the most experience I've had with this is like fandom discourse stuff where people will be like, I don't like this character, and someone else is like, oh, that's my favorite character. Why don't you like him? And it's like, I don't like him. And because that there are times where that's not accepted as an answer, then it turns into, okay, let me write a 20-page essay on why they're problematic and I don't like this about that. Like, no, sometimes people just like things just rub you the wrong way, and no, I don't want that anywhere near me. Respect that. Doesn't have to be a whole thing.
Yeah.
Similar to like I'm autistic, so I have issues with like certain textures in food, and sometimes I have to like lie and tell people I'm allergic, because if I say I just hate it, they're like, oh well, you'll like the way I do. I'm like, it's not about that. This food is terrible. It touches my mouth and I want to scream. Like it has nothing to do.
I don't have to tell you, it's not about you.
No, it's
not about
you. I promise.
And one of the wildest things is about that entire line where you go to the whole "it's not about you," is when they get insulted because you said that to them. That is just, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's triggering for me. I'm going to put that on my sheet. But yeah, so it when you say it's not about you, this is what we're talking about, what is making me uncomfortable. We're talking about what upsets me. And if you don't understand it, that doesn't matter. You don't get an explanation. I don't owe you any explanation. I don't owe you anything. I'm here to play a game with you. I've agreed to give you this portion of time of my life. I am not going to sacrifice that portion in time of my life to sit down and be questioned and be grilled about things that I might find traumatic. How is that beneficial to me? How does that in any way enhance my enjoyment of this evening? So I just, I'm getting angry just thinking about it. So we're not going to talk about that.
Well, I think another a thing to bring up when it comes to consent is it is okay that while during the game you come across something you may not have expected and you have to update your consent form. It is okay to come across other stuff that you're like, wow, well, I didn't put that originally, but this is now something.
Eyeballs and now eyelashes.
Eyeballs are eyelashes now. I don't know what it is. It's actually the eyelashes that freaked me out the entire time. It was wrong. It's okay to have those updates of, wow, like this actually bothers me. There's a player that I played with that realized there was an issue with something that he really didn't originally realize that was in his backstory. He was like, wow, I didn't realize how much that would actually bother me. That needs to be addressed. And you go to your DM, who you're supposed to be able to communicate those hard conversations with. And if you can't, that is another red flag that you need to be aware of. And say, hey, this wasn't originally there, but now I have an issue with this, just so you know, in case you have anything coming up. But if it comes up, have that conversation, because it might come up later on when you're not expecting it and trigger you all over again in a way that you don't originally anticipate. It's important to update those.
And the last thing I want to address about the arguments that were made against the consent in gaming was one of the ones that leads to some of the things that I've talked about that I enjoy, and that is bringing the emotional connection between player and character, and playing on those emotional connections in order to create story. One of the pushbacks that's been said a lot is, if I have to keep on checking with you and I have to keep on altering things to make sure you're comfortable, how can I tell a compelling story? And that is such a limiting thought process that it doesn't even actually really make sense. If you need to take every single story point to this horrific and tragic end every single time, then what are you actually doing?
Could you imagine being on a game every time where it was just trauma and emotion and you end up crying every single game and how exhausting that would be?
Dear God. I mean, that it reminds. Well, okay, that reminds me of like, because something for everybody. I guess there might be people who enjoy just ending up crying for 5 hours after every single session. I don't know. I'm not one of them.
Depends on the game.
But like, no, because like that reminds me of like, I when I had this. A lot of my like initial introduction to like games and like nerd stuff was through an older cousin of mine who won like a Magic the Gathering tournament at PAX East a few years ago, and like he had all these fantasy games and he would let me play for like 3 seconds, and he and I both liked fantasy, but we liked very, very different versions of it. He wrote and read stories that were just grim dark. They suffer every waking millisecond and then they die at the end, and it's just misery. And
Holy
I'm like,
shit.
dude, holy shit. Like, I'm over here like, I experience enough trauma in my daily life as an intersectionally marginalized person. I'm gonna make it so like, yes, there are the dramatic scenes, but everything ends up okay because damn it, I need something to look forward to, by God. And so like when he was, working on his own stuff, I was like, I will support you. I'm not reading that. You can't make me. Like, I can't do that. I can't deal with that kind of story. It's just not something that I would like to experience. And so like, and he's been playing D&D with his friends for like a million years, and their games are very similar of just like they're just suffering on screen every second. They haven't had a rest in 20 years.
I made my players cry. I made a player, and I saw her in chat a second ago. I made my player cry. But it was because of an emotional moment that honestly has driven the story in a very different direction than I initially anticipated. It is a storytelling thing. Like you said, this should not be a triggering, like traumatizing, we're crying every time now. I've cried on stream because my DM has made me cry on stream. I've cried once really hard on stream because my character almost died. I get that. But it should not be an every time trauma triggering. I don't know if you got into experience like that, super hard emotional, Lenora, because it sounds like you DM and driven your players to that. I'm sure that you've never been like, I'm going to emotionally break my players every game.
You're gonna ruin their week.
So funny enough, I was told that one of my strengths as a DM is that I write very challenging combats.
Ooh.
And so that was kind of like my thing. We never got super emotional, but I love the story aspect of DMing. I was definitely more story driven than I was the actual, roll this, roll that. But our other DM who does most of our DMing, he has definitely made me cry. But it was always good though. It was these beautiful emotional moments. I remember one time where, we had done the good thing and some of the people were saved, but some of them weren't. And so we got to see these townspeople mourning, and there were these mothers and some children didn't come back, And as a mom, I was like, oh my God, But it was good because I felt so connected to the story,
Mm-hmm.
So.
I will tell you the most traumatic thing I ever did to my players.
Oh my God.
And it was actually pre-thought out. Me and the character involved thought the entire scenario out. Because he was leaving my game and he wanted to let his character go in a incredible, dramatic fashion. It didn't work out exactly the way he wanted because it was going to be this whole rolling fight through a warehouse, and he was going to be the one holding the line and keeping the enemy back because his family and another character's family were kidnapped. and they're being held in this warehouse. And so the crew went in to rescue them. And so it was going to be the situation where he was going to hold the line while they got everyone out, and he was going to die. What ended up happening, because battle is chaos, is they accidentally lit the warehouse, accidentally kind of on purpose, lit the warehouse on fire. And so the fire kept on growing every turn. He still held back. He still did what he was supposed to do. So, and he was a barbarian. This was what made it worse. So in the end, he's yelled. The last scenes they see of him is him yelling for them to get them out of there as he's fighting, and then the building collapses on top of him. It's worse. They were getting him out. They had to grab his dad and his mom and drag them out of there as they watched a burning building collapse on their kid. They were dragging them away. As he was in the burning building, he is a barbarian. He is a bear totem barbarian. He is taking damage. He is taking half damage. It took him 7 rounds to die.
Oh, God.
Ray, you did not get my
Jesus.
for sharing the story. No, I'm just kidding.
Wait, it's the last scene was, he was there, and it was like, so it's like, he's trapped, and so much of the building fell on him, he could not lift it. But, the last, and I did not make him sit there and burn for 7 turns. We just did the math later and figured it out. But, so the last scene of him, before we did the whole, fade to black, was, he's laying there and he's in immense pain. He's dying. He knows he's dying. And he's like, do I know that I got them out? And I was like, yeah, you know that there's no way that anyone could have followed them. The building collapsed on you all. And he's like, then I'm okay to go. And that was the ending scene.
Bro, you're gonna make me cry.
Cool. We're all gonna cry on stream tonight. It's not even
the entire cast was crying. And then the worst part is, after the show, when we told them we had arranged for that, and he was like, that was so fucking epic. I had no idea it was going to end like that. And I was like, I had no idea. I'm the GM. I had no idea it was going to end like that. And he was like, that was so fucking... And then everyone else realized that we had arranged and choreographed this. And the screams of you bleeping bleeps that went... that was like one of the more epic games we had and everything like that. But like, I don't do that type of stuff on a regular basis. And like I said, this was something that was consensual between the player and myself. And we had made arrangements. And originally, like I said, it was just going to be a whole, he stands in the doorway hacking foes down left and right, but not letting any pass. If you try and go back and help him, whoever goes back is just going to be lost. And that's basically, I don't, as you can tell, I already had the narration planned out, but it didn't work out that way. And that's one of the things where, I knew where the trauma was going to go. I knew how it was going to play out. I had consent from the player involved.
Yeah.
And we did not get into any gratuitous depictions. Like, I didn't talk about what was happening to him as he was burning or anything disgusting like that. I was just going over that aspect of it,
And you can see how the 3 of us listening were already like enraptured of, oh my god, like you don't have to have that. Like, that's the thing. There are ways around it. There are ways. You don't have to tell us he burned, it was grotesque and all this stuff. We were already enraptured by listening of, oh my god, like that's such an incredible ending to a character. Like, wow. We don't have to hear it.
Yep. Because
that's enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the whole point of storytelling versus story dictating. I worked with him and we worked out the ideas, but we did not put any type of hard cap on how it was going to go. And we let it work out organically. And what we would have done would have been... thank you very much for following this picture. But what we would have done would have been very amazing, but this was so much more so that it was, it was kind of difficult. It's kind of difficult to look back on it now. And I've done other scenes. I've done scenes that made me cry. as I was role playing the scene. Yeah, sorry, Fox, that was loud. I'm sorry. The alert box is on full volume tonight. But yeah, so I've done scenes that made me cry. And I was crying both as a character and as me. Because, you know, you got to remember, when I'm telling a story and it's working out organically, I might not be prepared for what happens.
Right.
I was cried last week on a stream that I was not prepared for because my character has been looking for her old bard troop, and some of them have died, and she's missing 2 of them. And she found one, and he was alive. And the way it played out was just very, very natural, very organic, and I almost cried when that conversation was happening on stream. And it's okay to cry over something that's happening in a story. It is a collaborative story that you are consenting to be a part of. So make sure
good storytelling.
it is good storytelling. At the end of the day, we are supposed to be storytellers, not story dictators, or telling how the DM wants it to go down and railroading everybody. It is supposed to happen naturally, with the consent given. This is what I'm comfortable with in this story. This is what I'm okay to experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the collaborative nature of role playing and like the improvisation that's built into it is why covering your bases with consent is so important. Because I mean, most of my role playing experience is with like writing back and forth with people, but we always cover some sort of general, like, okay, this is the premise we're going with, these are the characters we're working with. I have a friend that like we've been writing stuff back and forth since freaking middle school. Like, we know each other's stuff very, very well. And we still cover like, okay, I'm thinking of having a scene where this happens. What do you think of that? And it's like, okay, yeah, this, but let's like make this alteration. I'm more comfortable with writing that. And I'm like, perfect. Okay, take a note somewhere, and then, whatever happens, because, you can have your outline, you can have your general idea I will Fox Rider, I fully will. I am always down to roleplay. To give the story space to kind of be its organic self and stuff. Characters will always go off the rails. You can never tell them what to do, no matter how much you're like, I know them. No, you don't. They're just out of spite sometimes. The fact that you think you know what a character's going to do, they're like, how dare you? I'm going to jump out the window now.
Can confirm, have done as a player.
Yeah, no, literally, like, just because you think that, you know what, I'm just going to, like, covering your bases early and making sure that, because stuff will always come up, but generally speaking, what people are okay with and, where everyone's boundaries are, means that you can let the story kind of take up its full space and know its full potential for both situations and how it's going to play out, and just let that take up all the space that it wants to within the boundaries that everybody's set. And then that means that you can play things out and not be as stressed out about it, because that's the other thing, is worrying if you're going to strike a nerve with the people around you because you don't know where the line is for everybody. And instead you're like, okay, perfect, lines are drawn in the sand, all right, let's go. And you can focus on telling the story because you know that you've covered your bases with making sure that everyone is ready to deal with what they're going to deal with and is comfortable with it.
Pretty much. I mean, and once again, it all boils down to that conversation about consent in the beginning, and making sure that, as Ivy said, making sure you're checking back in with everyone and making sure that everyone's okay. Making sure that you're, as a GM, one of the things you should always do is making sure you're monitoring your players' cues once you get to know them a little bit. Facial expressions, body positioning, and posturing. You can tell when someone's not into a scene when they're checking out, and you can also tell when whatever you're saying or doing is, triggering those nerves and making them feel uncomfortable. So, that's all in part, should be part of the GM's tool set. And so even if it's something that you're storytelling and they've never listed on any of their sheets, but you can see those eyes go wide, and it's not that whole, flabbergasted look. It's that whole, what's happening? I don't like it.
Right.
Yeah, so that should be definitely in your tool set. And if you with new groups, it's going to be hard, but once you get an established play group, that should be something you learn about your players, because we as GMs have this immense responsibility when it comes to the games that we run. It is, and this is something, when I was running AL, this is something I would always tell my new GMs when they came in to run. I was like, you are asking someone to give you 4 hours of their lives. They will never get it back. They are sacrificing 4 hours of their lives. Oops, stretch time. They're sacrificing 4 hours of their lives, and you are there saying, I'm going to entertain you for 4 hours. I'm going to make sure that you don't regret this. And that is no small responsibility in my eyes. Because all time is precious. And especially time that you've literally set aside to try and enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
Well, does anyone have anything else they'd like to bring up?
I thought of one last thing, and I'll say it quickly.
No, you don't have to say it quickly. Go right ahead.
I mean, we've talked about, what DMs and what players should do, with consent. We've talked a little bit about, kind of arguments against consent. I would say, too, at the end of the day, I want to believe that anybody can grow and change. But at the end of the day, you as a player or you as a DM, it is not your responsibility to force that growth. Okay? It is that person's job to do their own growing. When it comes to that too, people are either a can't or a won't, anybody can grow or change. And if they say that they can't, they're actually a won't. And at that point, they can just go away.
Well, there is a lot of things with the can't that are, they're probably going to definitely have, there may be situations that's definitely absolutely true. It's not that they can't, it's that they won't. They have come into a comfort zone and they're not willing to leave it. But there is also a lot of situations where people say, I can't. And it's because they have things that are blocking that growth that they don't understand. Mm-hmm. Which is why I refer back to my other comment of RPGs are not fucking therapy.
That's true.
Do not try and work through that trauma at an RPG table. That's just going to lead to more trauma. Go see a therapist. There's lots of them. They're very, very nice. I see one twice a week. Not really, once a week. But yeah, do what you can to get healthy. Don't try and use the table to deal with your personal demons. That's not what an RPG game is for. And I've actually had lots of discussions with people online who tried to argue that RPGs are therapy. And I was like, it's not therapy just because it makes you feel good. There's lots of things that make you feel good that are incredibly bad for you. If things that make you feel good were therapy, then heroin would be therapy.
I was literally about to be like, cocaine?
Yeah.
That's not therapy.
And then the jerk that I was talking to was like, cocaine or heroin is therapy. And I was like, no, it's a painkiller.
Bro.
That's not therapy, asshole.
That's not what therapy means.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So yeah, you're gonna have discussions like that. But yeah, Fox. Not always. There's not always cameras. But it is good to have cameras because if you're gonna run off a strictly vocal inflection, it can be very, very difficult. Make things much more difficult. I always recommend if you're playing an RPG that you have cameras up so you can see each other. Just because you get that extra. We are visual creatures. We have body cues. We have body language. And it is a huge tool for anyone to be able to see each other.
And if you can't, it's okay to DM somebody if you think you hear an inflection. Just like, hey, how's everything going? Like, how are you feeling about the session? It doesn't need to be the, hey, you had a tone in your voice. Like, are you all right? It's, hey, I just want to make sure and check in. Like, are you doing okay?
How are you doing?
It's okay to ask.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, both as players, if you notice another player struggling, you hear that, you think you hear something in a tone. That's why we have DMs. Fire one off. Let them know that someone else is out there. And that's true for any player. If the GM is not noticing something, check with the player. Make sure the player, reach out to the player, check with the player. If the player is struggling, then, that's when they may need an advocate. They may not feel comfortable with bringing this up. There's a lot of people that I know personally who would suffer through fire and hell to be at a table because they want to play that bad. They want that social interaction that bad. And so they won't protest shit. And I have had to be an advocate for them on many occasions. And I think the worst things that have ever happened is when they don't advocate for themselves and no one catches it. Because
then it keeps going.
Yeah.
And then it gets uncomfortable for everybody. And then it keeps becoming an issue. And then they'll put us up in your face. Then you have a much larger situation to deal with.
Okay, so I'm not coming to any of your home games ever.
I will say I'm very lucky. I have a lot of really good players, but I've seen it happen where DMs or even players don't bring up certain issues that they should, and then it becomes a problem much later in the game, and then you have to deal with that one way or another.
And Fox Rider, keep fighting that fight. Learning your own personal boundaries, learning how to advocate for yourself. It can be one of the hardest struggles that people face, especially in cultures like ours where we deal with a lot of people who are already traumatized. People reach out to RPGs for a lot of different reasons, and one of the biggest is because it gives them a feeling of belonging with other people who hold less than contemporary viewpoints. So they are much more comfortable in this group and they feel like this is a home. But that also means that if something bad happens in that situation, it's happening at home. And that can be a multiplier on the traumatic nature of that. So, yeah, make sure you work on that, Fox. Make sure everyone works on that. Advocate for yourself. We will, as players, I'm sure we can all say that we would all be there and try and advocate for you, but that can't be counted on all the time. So do your best to advocate for yourself. Do your best to use your voice. And like we were saying in the beginning, when that consent form hits the table, be honest on it. You know what I mean? And like Lenora pointed out, the default is no.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is a great way to go into any of that. Mm-hmm. The default's no.
Yep.
Until stated otherwise.
Absolutely. All right. Well, does anyone else have anything they want to bring up this evening? I think we may have beaten this horse into submission. So, like I was saying earlier, everyone on this panel are creators, and they do amazing works. Lenora has some amazing maps, and her stuff is incredible. She has a wonderful Patreon. If you guys want to go join her Patreon, she get access to a lot of stuff. I am still waiting to go through and look at everything that I just got access to because I just joined it today.
I'm excited. Yeah. If you have any feedback or thoughts, I'd love to hear it.
Yep. And Ivy is a content creator on Twitch. She has her own shows that she runs. She has shows that she takes part in on a myriad of different shows. You can find Ivy over on Twitch. Actually, you can find Ivy at all of her links in her link tree. And Milagros is on our wonderful Wednesday night Kingdoms of Mist show. And I'm spelling her name wrong, so it's not going to work. And she is a content creator on TikTok. And Ivy is also a content creator on TikTok too. So, and Malagos is a content creator on TikTok. She is on our Twitch stream on Wednesdays. She often comes on Dinner Conversations, which I'm so thankful for because she is a voice of reason in the chaos, and her ability to compel and complete a story is amazing. So I'm thankful for her every single time we game. No, not yet, Matt. I might speak with some people after the show about that. So we'll talk about that later, Foxrider. But in the meantime, it is time to let these people go and get about their lives. I have taken up enough of their time this evening. I'm so thankful for every one of them for being here. Please, guys, if you want to help out Dinner Game in any way, shape, or form, give us a follow here. If you have not, we would always appreciate that. Remember, if you have Amazon Prime, which 98% of us do, which is why Bezos is a dick. If you have Amazon Prime, you do have a free subscription on Amazon Prime to one Twitch channel a month. We would be honored if you would give it to us. We would be appreciative if you did. All the money we make goes to supporting the stream, such as we are working on the lab experiments in gaming, launching off and starting their own Twitter. And the funds that we get from this show are going to go towards helping them build out a PC so they can stream and they don't have to be piggybacking on us, and they can have their own content and have their own nights and everything. So we're doing our best to make that happen, and your support helps us out with that. You can also go and find us on Linktree, on our Linktree there, and you can go and support us by ordering merch. We have shirts, we have hats, we have so many weird things. We don't have socks. Although my wife keeps on yelling at me that we need socks. We don't have socks yet. I'm going to make socks. I am very sorry. But we have all that stuff that you can buy to support us. And, of course, if you want to support us in other ways, we do have a Patreon, which gets you special bonuses in Discord. And we are going to, as soon as we get enough Patreon followers, we're going to start a once-a-month Patreon-only game, where we are going to run a game once a month for our Patreon followers, and we will even let the Patreon followers pick the game, because I think I own every game ever made. So, yeah. I had way too much free money and free time when I was younger, and then I had the ability to move lots of boxes afterwards. So, but what we're going to do now is we are going to raid another stream. You know what, Ivy, do you have any suggestions for a stream we could raid right now?
What kind would you like? Because I've got 6 others pulled up.
I was going to say, because I've got
I knew as soon as you said it, I was like,
yeah, I've got streams that I usually raid too pulled up, but I figure you were nice enough to come on the show. Why don't I let you pick where we're going? Just give me a name.
You know what? Let's go see the wonderful people over at the Welcome Inn. They are currently playing Off the Rails, which is one of their campaigns that they run every Friday. In addition to, they have a Saturday one that they run as well, which is Conundrum Company. They are great. The governor is on there. I believe Sean, Mr. Sugar Dance is their DM. So.
Mr. Sugar Dance? Oh shit, we're going just because his name is Mr. Sugar Dance.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you once again, everyone, for tuning in tonight. We're really glad you participated. We appreciate everyone who participated in chat. And thank you once again to all my panel members. We are now going to raid the Welcome Inn at the suggestion of Miss Ivy, and I get to follow yet another Twitch stream, which I think puts me at 400. So here we go.
Dang, I gotta follow more people.
Well, when we raid, I always follow, because it's just the way we help promote the community.
Because there's so many good channels.
I know, that's the biggest problem. All right, here we go. And we are clear. Let me stop the recording. All right, and it's always so hard because I don't have Twitch up, so I always miss it when I raid.
It's Sarah's Coffee on that is on that one.
Sarah's Coffee is amazing. I love her so much.
She's a doll. She's such a sweetie.
Yep. She's in 60 seconds on TikTok. I'm gonna say this because it's mean but true. In 60 seconds on TikTok, some of her little stories and skits, that bitch can make me cry.
Oh no, you are correct. She is absolutely wonderful. I love her very much.
Yeah.
She's a good friend. I haven't seen her for a bit, but I love her very much.
She is
So
loud.
the big thing about the whole dinner conversations is, of course, just talking about subjects that
And
are usually very contentious within the community.
Mhm.
And we were obviously very one-sided on this panel. But at the same time, I have
almost
not
like
found an opposing argument that didn't break down to some kind of bigotry or, you
Yep.
know,
Right.
something like that. So I've never found anyone who is worth bringing on to argue counterpoint with. And I've gotten some flack for that. But at the same time, I just can't see, number one, putting my other guests through the trauma of having to deal with that. And number two, giving a voice to someone who might, end up spouting that off. So I just didn't want you guys to think that we were just doing this one-sided thing because.
Oh no, I thought this was really good.
Yeah. So anyway, other than that,
to get away.
we are done for the evening. Oh, I forgot to give a follow here. Oh, I already followed them.
Yeah, that's what we did.
Nice.
Why didn't they come up on my raid list?
Kind of that maddening grin.
They're wonderful. They're great. Love every single one of them.
Insanity. And he just points
So,
at the two
um,
and
Ivy, did you want to chat about the other issue?
asked him.
Which I do not know
Let
if
me
we
let you
will
know
want to,
because,
but take on that.